Hello class, it's Professor Streeter, and I want to spend a little time looking at the assignments for week 2 and focusing on what I've shared with you in the week 2 content page on D2L. So let's look at it together. I'll put myself in the corner here. This is the week 2 content page. We've got a picture of Epicurus, an early Greek philosopher from the 3rd century BC. And he defends an idea that we're going to talk about this week, an idea that has come to be called hedonism or hedonism. It's a view about the good life, a view about value and what we seek in life, what we value in life, and what makes life good. To simplify, Epicurus thought that the good that we're seeking is pleasure. Everything we do is for the sake of pleasure, and this, for him, is the starting point of understanding the nature of the good life. So that's a picture of him, a sculpture of Epicurus. Hedonism will be the central idea that we explore. We're also going to talk this week about how to read a piece of philosophy for argument. I've shared some videos with you about that. And how to summarize someone else's argument in your writing or when you're talking. And so that's the goal of the first homework assignment, to give you some practice summarizing someone else's argument. Okay, so here's the reading assignment. Start the first 2 chapters of Schaefer-Landau's The Fundamentals of Ethics. And this is where he introduces, in his own terms, the idea of hedonism, this particular approach to the good life, and some of the reasons for thinking it is a plausible idea, and some of the reasons for criticizing it. So some questions or problems that emerge when we start thinking about what it really means to live a hedonistic life. Is that really the best picture of the good life? Is that the best way of explaining what makes life good? So chapters 1 through 2 explore some of the attractions of hedonism and some of the problems with it. Look at the selections in the ethical life. So I've given you an online version of a letter that Epicurus wrote. So he defends this very early idea of hedonism. But we've also got a piece by John Stuart Mill, a later 18th century British philosopher, who develops the Epicurean idea that the good we're seeking in life is pleasure, that everything that we do is for the sake of pleasure or happiness. And then we have a reading by a guy named Chris Heathwood, who's a living philosopher. He lives in Wisconsin, and he has his own view about the good life, a little bit different from Mill's and Epicurus's, and so we'll talk about the difference. Okay, I've also got some videos for you to watch, and I can show you how to find them. The writing assignment then. First, this is our first week of the Monday feedback. And if you don't know how to do that, here, let me go into the student view. Right, you go into the Monday feedback directly through the week 2 content module. You can click it here. And I just want you to post a question and a comment about the reading, either from last week or from this week. And each week, aim to post something in the beginning of the week, preferably by the end of the day on Monday, so I can start thinking about what you're thinking about, okay? So that starts today. That starts in week 2. Let me go back then to the week 2 content page. We've also got a discussion that has begun this week, and you can do that on your own time. But try to get to it earlier in the week if you can, so that other students can see what you're thinking about and so that you can respond to what other students say. This week's discussion is focused on Nozick's experience machine from last week, from something you looked at last week. So Robert Nozick poses this thought experiment, right? Suppose you're plugged into this machine. There's 2 things I want you to think about. First, should you plug into that machine for life, as he puts it, not just for the day or for the afternoon or for a long weekend, but if you were given the opportunity to trade in your life for a virtual life plugged into a machine, should you do that? Why or why not? In a few sentences, explain your answer to that question. And then think about what the implications of that are, right? Once you've thought about whether you should plug into the machine, what does that reveal? What are your reasons for plugging in or not plugging in? What does that reveal about what you value and what you value intrinsically for its own sake? Something is valued intrinsically if you value it for its own sake, not for the sake of something else. Right, so pleasure is thought to be something that we value for its own sake. We want pleasure because it's good all by itself. In any case, if you think that you should plug into the machine or you shouldn't plug into the machine, what does that tell you about what you value and what you value intrinsically? Okay? Second, and then consider how this relates to our topic of hedonism. Right? If the hedonist is right, then pleasure is the only thing worth desiring for its own sake. So are you a hedonist? What does your thought about the experience machine show about your own relationship to the idea of hedonism, right? Do you think that plugging into the machine is like choosing a life of pleasure? And if so, does that show that hedonism is the way to go? Or if you think that you have a reason not to plug into the machine, does that show that there's some problem with hedonism? That there's more to life than pleasure, or how things feel on the inside? Okay? So those are things to think about as you reflect on the thought experiment. And I've asked you to share your thoughts in the discussion for this week. Okay? Okay, that's a lot. I'm just trying to set that up. Maybe I've already said too much. Then the homework assignment, if you click here, this is due for Sunday. And here I want you to give a careful reading of Chris Heathwood's piece, Faring Well and Getting What You Want. As you read it, I've given you some questions to consider and to jot down some thoughts in your notes as you read through Heathwood. So these questions are aimed at helping you focus on the structure of the argument and some of the key terms that he employs. So he introduces a question, the question of welfare. How does he understand that? See if you can write it in your own words in your notes. This will be a way of gauging how closely you're reading and how much you're understanding the reading. He draws a really important distinction in his essay, a distinction between a subjective theory of welfare and an objective theory. What's the difference? How does he draw that distinction? All right. Once you've identified the question of welfare, he's going to be developing a theory of welfare. Well, there's two different types of theories: subjective theories, objective theories. What's the difference? He goes on to defend what he calls a subjective theory of welfare. He calls it the desire theory. Well, what is that? How does he defend it? Maybe give an example from the text to show how he defends that theory. There are, toward the end of his essay, think about the structure of the argument, he presents the question, draws a distinction between two types of theories of welfare, and then defends or gives reasons to think that the subjective theory is the way to go. But then toward the end of the essay, he considers objections, or reasons for maybe disagreeing with his view, reasons for rejecting his view. So see if you can identify one of the objections and describe it in your own words. This is all for your notes. And think about how he responds to one of the objections at the end. Okay, that's a lot, but the more you can write in your notes, right, the better you can gauge how well you're understanding what you're reading. And then the homework assignment is to take your notes from the reading and write a paragraph summary of what you think Heathwood has argued. I give you 500 words as a goal, right? That's the goal. I don't want it to be much longer than that. It's okay if it's a little bit under that, but aim for about 500 words of writing, a paragraph, a complete paragraph. Think about paragraph structure. I've attached here at the bottom a rubric. So if you click here, there's a rubric. Let's see if this comes up for us. I'm not sure. Oh, okay. So and I can click it. Let's see if we can see this together. Well, it's not easy, but let me try to blow it up here. This is showing you what I'm looking for, or the four main things I'm looking for in your summaries, your homework summaries. Okay, and I break down what the different grades would correspond to. So an A means you're doing all four of these things well. A B means you're doing maybe 3 of these things in your summary. A C means you did maybe 1 or 2 of these things. And a D or an F means you really didn't do any of these things in your summary. Okay, so that's just a rough rubric for thinking about what I'm looking for in your writing. Did you identify the central claim that Heathwood makes? Have you identified some of the central reasons, or at least one of the central reasons that he gives in defense of his main claim? Did you say something about the connection between the central claim or the central conclusion he's trying to draw and some of the reasons that he gives in support of them. So how do you explain the connection? Well, you can give examples, you can clearly define the terms, you can make distinctions and explain those distinctions. That's a way to come to explain the connection between what he's arguing and how he supports it. And then the fourth thing I want to look for is that you're citing passages, that you're staying in the text, right? That you're either using a direct quotation or a paraphrase, and that what you're saying about Heathwood has some support, some textual support in what he actually says. Okay, so those are four things to think about in your summary homework. Okay, so let me come back then to the assignment. So what I'm asking you to do is to summarize his argument. I give you some language here to think about what an argument is. You can go back and read the introduction to Schaefer-Landau's book where he talks about arguments. But here's my description of what an argument is. So your task in your summary is to answer the question, what is Heathwood's central claim and how does he support that claim? Okay? And make sure that you show me that you know something about how to cite a source. So we can work on that more together this semester, but cite Heathwood at least somewhere in your paragraph, since that's what you're summarizing. If you don't have the book yet, you can read a PDF of Heathwood's essay here. I've included that here. Okay? So let's go back then. We're running out of time, but those are the main assignments for this week. Here you can find the discussion linked at the bottom of the content page. You can enter it directly here. And here's the homework assignment. There's no quiz this week. There was a quiz from last week that you still have time to complete. I think by Wednesday is the last day to complete the quiz from last week. Okay, the last thing I want to show you here is if you click this web page, it goes to week 2 videos and slideshows. Okay, here's a video that I've shared with you about how to read for argument or how to read a piece of philosophy. Many of you have talked about, you're struggling with reading philosophy. This video should help you. I model that with one of the readings from this week. And then here's a link to the homework assignment. And then this video, we have 2 books. One by Schaefer-Landau, where he introduces some of the themes and problems in moral philosophy. And then The Ethical Life, which is a collection of readings. It includes Heathwood and Mill from this week and Nozick from last week. So how to think about these 2 books together. What is the relationship between these 2 books? This video helps you think about that and talks about how to read Schaefer-Landau's The Fundamentals of Ethics and connect it to some of the readings in The Ethical Life. Okay? So those are 2 videos. I also have some slideshows about hedonism. Okay? There's 2 parts to this slideshow. And then the 3rd slideshow gives you some examples of arguments against hedonism that come up in chapter 2 of Schaefer-Landau. These slideshows, you can look at them now. I'm going to share some short videos working through these slideshows with you this week. But start reading and thinking about hedonism. Maybe look at the slideshows for some guidance. And then later this week, maybe even later tonight, I'll share with you some more short videos where I walk through some of the slides in the slideshow. Okay, I hope that's useful. Please reach out to me if you have any questions, and I will do my best to answer them. Okay, take care.